Hello, everybody. Welcome to the World Economic Forum. I don't know the count of this episode, but it's well over 500. And I'm going to be moderator today because Sharif doesn't have a good enough internet connection to be able to do it. And by moderating, it just means that I'm introducing the show and ending the show. We're Today we're talking about consciousness. What is consciousness? And hopefully we'll keep it interesting enough that you can all stay conscious. Uh, um, and the easiest way to do this is just go around in a circle, and we'll start with, oops, David disappeared. I was going to suggest we start with David because he's dressed so incredibly well that he's the perfect person to start with. So let's go, David.
Well, Donald, thank you. It's actually good getting out and going to events where they really want you to wear a suit and tie. That's been not the norm for the last several years. And it actually goes and kind of looks around today's topic too of consciousness. And, consciousness has been something that has been even debated in ancient times. And it's changed a lot. If you go back to the ancient Greeks and others, consciousness was different because the earth was the center of the universe. And all your consciousness revolved around the earth and the society that you were in on the earth. And so the consciousness back then was actually your place and sense of being in the social structures that were put in place back there, the social and political structures. How it has evolved over the years, though, is consciousness today is really thought more about how you respond to your surroundings, how you respond to the environment, how you look at the uh, elements around you, and are you self-aware? So if you go back and look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, consciousness actually goes back and relates to various elements of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's one which I can just see so many difference. There's multiple types. There's 4 different levels of consciousness as you begin to go through. And, being a person who went up through the growing up through the 70s and the 80s, we also saw that consciousness during that time took different meanings because a lot of the world back then was looking at ways to go into altered consciousness and things as well. So it's a word that is full of different meanings and is one that is personalized really to the individuals looking at it. Yes, I could be conscious if I'm not in a coma, if I'm together. But also, we've also seen science, though, come back and say that even when we're in an unconscious state, we tend to see brainwave activities in others that helps pull us into a conscious that we have conscious thought even when we're unconscious. So it's a great topic, and I'm actually looking forward to see what Rob says because Rob always gives a really neat dynamics approach to it. So Rob, I'm going to let it go to you.
Well, thank you for that lead in. All right, consciousness. The goes back to Descartes. I think, therefore, I am. It's the underlying process of being aware of your surroundings, being aware of those things that motivate your actions, basically being a complex individual. And there's a lot of discussion right now about robotics and consciousness, the idea that we will reach a point where an artificial intelligence could become self-aware, and we connect that with sentience, and certainly some interesting discussions right now about whether or not the biggest problem the human race has is there are too many of us that aren't conscious, aren't don't have the wherewithal to understand why it is we do things. The number of people that commit crimes, make decisions, and then when they're subsequently asked why they made them, they have no answer. That they just made them as if they were following somebody else, or somebody else dictated to them what it was they were supposed to do. Children are particularly are uniquely identified as a group of individuals that often lack consciousness. Something that they develop later on in life. But when they're young, they are motivated to act emotionally motivated, or act on the spur of the moment without being aware of the consequences of their actions. And when you ask them why they did something, the common, I'm sure we all were in that boat when we were young as well. The common response was, "I don't know. You did something. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but when you think back and analyze it, it not only wasn't it a good idea at the time, you really have no recollection of why you made the decision that you made." This lack of consciousness is kind of a recurring theme with regard to political actions in particular, where you're watching a large number of political players that appear to be moving in lockstep against their own self-interest, and once again, seemingly unable to determine the reasons behind their actions, or how those actions and reactions will affect not only the lives of their constituents but their own lives. But I think the most interesting aspect of this for me is, as we look at robotics and artificial intelligence, whether or not consciousness is something that will become a requirement in terms of robotics. I was watching RoboCop, the latest one, the other day, and one of the interesting lines in the movie is they're trying to roll out robots that are law enforcement, and nobody in the storyline, nobody in the United States wants them. And the argument is because those robots that they're trying to enforce the laws and using lethal force will have no empathy, will have no understanding of the damage that they'll be doing, and therefore they can't be trusted. They have no consciousness. They have no awareness of their surroundings. They're being given a directive, and that directive, as I noted, could include lethal force, and they would do so without any regret or concern, much like a sociopath or a psychopath might do. They lack that fundamental element of empathy, and of course the result is they develop RoboCop, which is a human inside an android, a human inside a machine, and the human is to have empathy, and that very consciousness that they put back in the robot in the storyline turns the cyborg against its creators. And eventually, the cyborg RoboCop brings the corrupt corporation in line, because the overarching story is the corporation is the one that lacked consciousness, it lacked empathy, it lacked an understanding of what it was trying to accomplish, and that it was contrary to the benefits of the human race and even its own existence. So this philosophical concept of consciousness is heavily used in our discussions with regard to artificial intelligence and robotics, and as we rotate through and talk about these technologies being used in areas like defense, weapons of war, for instance. Do you really want a weapon of war that might have a conscious, that might be conscious, that might be aware of its surroundings? In science fiction, there have been a number of stories written about smart bombs that were so smart they didn't explode, which would be a nature of consciousness. But also kind of a troubling story in terms of why you might not want to do this for a weapon system, because the weapon system might decide not to function, and might decide to turn against its creators. In fact, most of our stories going back to Frankenstein's monster, really have to do with this effort to kind of understand what it would take, what would happen if we developed an artificial life form, and that artificial life form became conscious, and through that consciousness, that awareness of its surroundings, turned against its creator or creators, and there lies the conundrum of our AI development, the very thing we're trying to imbue artificial intelligence with, may be the very thing that turns that artificial intelligence against us and turns it into the threat that a number of leading scientists have increasingly pointed out is a problem with our development path with artificial intelligence, and has resulted in programs like AI Shield out of the Lifeboat Foundation and a similar program out of Google to address what could eventually become a hostile artificial intelligence working at machine speeds. So it's an interesting topic. It's one that the part of it, as I mentioned, that I like is artificial intelligence, but the other part is kind of the understanding that there are probably large number of people out there that are living and are not really conscious of their life. They're working 9 to 5. They're doing what they're always been told. They're not thinking about their surroundings. They're kind of drone-like individuals, and the fact or the belief that that there are people out there that lack that human those attributes that we associate with humans, not only is a bit concerning, but an interesting area of discussion as we develop artificial life and decide what we want to imbue that artificial life with, whether we want it to be conscious or whether we want it to be something else, if only to protect ourselves from an artificial intelligence that did not think that we were justified in living. So, interesting topic today. Not one that I'm that well versed on, but one that I enjoy discussing. So I'll pass the hat now.
So Hugh, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this now.
Yeah, well, this thing, I'm a person who try to look into problem. The only problem I can solve. Usually I solve them. After I solve them, nobody can understand it. So it doesn't make difference which topic I talk about. Thank you for the introduction. Okay, but there's one thing, free will. Okay, free will consciousness. I can talk more about free will, but it's the same as consciousness. You see, I can have a robot. A robot has no range of tolerance. It cannot decide, too many ways to move, okay, because we did not give it free will. Okay, in other words, it's all in the creation. Okay. The creator can give the created free will. By the same token, the creator can give the created consciousness. Okay, so there is this, this is very fundamental, logically derived type of system that I'm trying to say, this is the way all my work is always, I look at this value and I solve the problem of value. I look at complete automation, I solve the problem of complete automation. I look at touch. It's very difficult, but I show the mechanism that you need is a sudden increase force. Okay, now you look at all these AI days, second AI day of Tesla. They missed this piece. Okay, the robot cannot touch. Okay, for 300 years, physics cannot, solve this contact problem, and the robotics is the 6th generation Japanese computer science. But Japanese has spent 10 years, they couldn't solve this touch problem. So all these things are really part of this free will consciousness. It's all part of the creation, okay? So you want to explain it. What is there to explain? The creator must be able to explain. But, in some sense, the creator doesn't even know how to explain, you see. It becomes very strange kind of terminology. It seems to imply something more than just physical. Yeah, sure, it's not. Sometimes things get to a point that it doesn't look like physical. But so basically that is what I say. And also there is, if you want to really get into something beyond that you can solve, you can look at the unconsciousness, consciousness, which is very much have to do with Rob just said. Okay. there are a lot of unconsciousness going on. Okay, so consciousness should be the opposite of unconsciousness. But unconscious is also created. Okay, it doesn't want you to be too conscious of the unconsciousness. Okay, so for some reason, the creator wants humans to have a unconscious part, which definitely control human behavior more than the conscious part. Okay, you develop the unconscious part when you're 6 years to 12 years old, according to psychologists. Okay, so you have this cultural background, and for the rest of your life, you will just defend what you learn in your 6 to 12 years old. So the world is very difficult to handle. Okay, you face with people, immediately you see what is this guy's cultural background, which is mostly influenced by 6 to 12 years old. Okay, Rob is pretty much exploring into this area. Some people just, you have no way to change them. I'm sure Rob has a lot of experience dealing with this type of people. You cannot change them because they already got this idea, in their mind, in their unconsciousness. You see, they don't even know where it is. Okay, so the conscious part is actually is a good part. Okay, so they separate this consciousness has another meaning, is in the reverse of unconsciousness. So I like this consciousness, but all this discussion, it probably doesn't have much to do with me. I just look at my Facebook and I saw I'm invited again and again. So okay, now I invite again. Okay, I come and meet old friends. I'm glad I see all three of you, the most knowledgeable people in this forum. You see,
Well, thank you. Nice to see you.
I'm very glad to see all old friends.
That's wonderful.
David, you really should go dancing with me. Okay. David is young, very young. Okay. So
and
I danced last week.
Too.
I danced 4 times. So what can you say?
He's young and well dressed.
That's all. I shouldn't say too much because I don't have the reputation of saying things that I cannot solve. Okay.
Well, I think that when we talk about consciousness, it's useful to talk about our experience of consciousness. Like, we can ask the question is, what does consciousness mean to us? I mean, if you're conscious, what does it mean? Like, what does it mean for you to be conscious? You experience things, this unified world around you, where the sights and the sounds and the feelings and all of these are blended together into an experience that you have. And part of that experience is the experience of yourself, of your body, your positions in space, what you're doing, your orientation, and you switch between what you're focused on. You may be focused on listening to me, and then after a little bit, you're focused on the position you are in the chair, or you might be, or something I say might spark a thought in your brain. So you switch to thinking about a memory, and it's this kind of, you experience consciousness as kind of this temporal stream that just happens. We talk about stream of consciousness. I think that term came from William James, and we experience consciousness as this stream. And one of the things that Rob and others have brought up is this, and Hugh just brought up, is this idea of will and volition. So the idea is, we say to ourselves, I'd like a drink of coffee. So I pick up my coffee cup and have a drink of coffee. And so if we want to explore consciousness and understand consciousness, we need to understand what the brain is doing, what our bodies are doing when we do that. So in theory, there should be something that we could find in our brain, some neurological pattern that's giving our body the instructions to have our hands reach out and get it. And as Hugh said, we need to have the tactile sensation so that we know where our arm is in space and feel that we've actually touched the handle of the handle of the cup, and feel it touch our lips, and all of the different sensations that we have to make that happen. And we may be partially conscious of it, but we've done it so many times, we may not even have to think about it. We can be conscious of something else. We can switch between those different things. And so we know that aspect of consciousness. And it's fair to say consciousness is what Rob talked about, like the consciousness that you have of the political situations that you're in, or the consciousness that you have of somebody's emotional situations. So consciousness, as David pointed out and Rob's pointed out, really has quite a few different meanings. And I think it's reasonable to accept all of those meanings and bring them all in. But what's important to realize is that in our brains, that's not what happens. In our brains, what happens is that we start to do these things, and about as much as a half a second before we are conscious of it. So consciousness lags behind what we do by as much as half a second. Consciousness isn't volition. It isn't what causes us to do things. We don't consciously decide to do things and will them to happen. What we do is we start to do them, and then our brain kind of tricks us into thinking that we willed them to happen. It's not that way. It's the other way. It's the other way around. And so when we're thinking of consciousness, and we have to try and figure out what consciousness is, we have to take that into account. And it was fascinating that I got, this is very well known in neuroscience. It's been known all the way since the 60s. And trying to figure out an explanation for it's been a problem. And just out of the most amazing coincidence, the same about 10 minutes after I got the invitation from Sharif for this show, I got a article from Neuroscience News, which is one of the places that I get information from. It was a link to a recent article about consciousness, some of a new, very well thought out theory about consciousness. And what they suggest is that consciousness is basically memory, a way that we use for memory. And it basically developed out of episodic memory. So when you think about it, there's kind of a problem that has to be solved by the brain, which is that different things are stored in different places. So the memory of your tactile sensations is the part of your brain that has feeling, and the part of your brain that has sight, and the part of your brain that has hearing are different places. They're different parts of your brain. But the memories that you have are seamless. They're all integrated together. And so something has to happen inside of your brain to be able to integrate all those memories and put them together in a seamless way. And so the theory is, or a good possibility is that consciousness is the part of your brain that developed to be able to integrate those. And as that happened, it became a useful place for you to have the ability to start basically prototyping things. And one of the things that's really interesting about memory that it's important and it applies to consciousness is that it's very bad. And people think of memory as something like a disk drive, but I have a little exercise I do in a workshop I give where I plant false memories in people. And I do this exercise, and about half the people in the class wind up with a false memory after I do it. And I talked to a neuroscientist at Stanford, and who was giving a little talk on memory, and I talked to him afterwards, and I told him about that, and he said, "Oh, I do the same thing, exact same exercise in my class." And it's very easy to plant false memories in people. And once a person has a false memory, it seems totally real to them when they access the false memory. One example is a psychologist took a test subject and told him that she'd interviewed the family, and they told him about a time that they were at Disneyland and he'd gotten lost, and he was very young, and they looked for him and they couldn't find him. And when they finally found him, he was sitting on Donald Duck's lap. And they told him, they very questioned him about it, and just kept asking him about it, and developed this, and he would answer questions, and he started to remember it. And he remembered more and more of this story until he really remembered this whole story about him getting lost in Disneyland and sitting in Donald Duck's lap. Well, Donald Duck isn't a Disney character. That couldn't possibly have happened. But yet he absolutely was sure it remembered. And when you ask people about their false memories, they're more sure of their false memories than they are of their real memories. And so our memory is imagination. And so when we're conscious of our memories, it's imagination. So perception, we thought for so long that perception was something external would happen, and through various kinds of processes it would get refined until we'd have vision or we'd have hearing and things like that. But we now know that isn't really what happens. What happens is our brain creates a world, and we act on this world that our brain creates. And then if something happens outside that is different than the world that our brain creates, our brain modifies the world that our brain creates. And so it changes. And because of that, we're always acting on things that are a little bit behind. But what's acting isn't our conscious part, it's the unconscious part. And when I asked the same neuroscientist at that same thing about how much do you think of our brain as the conscious part, and he said probably 2%. And nobody knows, there's no real way to actually measure it, but he said it's probably about 2%. And so really what's going on for us is your brain is doing all this fantastic stuff. I mean, musicians aren't conscious of what they're going to play. I'm a musician. I don't sit to myself. When I was first learning, I was going, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this. But once you learn, you can't think about it. I mean, you're doing it too fast. Baseball players aren't conscious of what they're doing. You can't be. It's happening too fast. Consciousness is very slow. And so most of what we do is unconscious, and we don't really, in a sense, have free will. And the answer, I think, to the question about what happens for people when they're stuck, they're limited, and they don't have a broad perspective, is to train their unconscious to be different. And one way to do that is by expanding their experience. And I know that there was a study done that people who've lived in a foreign country do twice as well on tests of creativity as people who haven't. So I think you'll find the people who are most limited and most bigoted and prejudiced and things like that are actually people that that were have lived had the least experiences in their lives. And as you have more experiences in your lives, you have more memories and unconscious choices that can come into your conscious memory and be there for you to be able to use to assemble into different possibilities for you to make different choices. So that's what I've learned about consciousness. And now we've got another person. No, it's Dr. Sharif came back. Hi.
Hi, thank you. Excellent discussion. I'm just listening today. Professor Donald is a moderator for today's session. I'm a listener. So other speakers, you can proceed.
Okay, great. Well, David, back
Donald,
to you.
I've loved what you and Rob and Hugh have said. It's so good for this topic, and to me, the multiple levels of consciousness are important for us to consider as well. I mean, I can tell you with personal experience lately, during the day, I consciously avoid thinking about some things. I avoid any consideration. But somehow, when I'm in a dream state, my subconsciousness will bring those topics up and wake me up on things that I have consciously avoided during the day. So the consciousness works in very unique ways. Um, and you see that the growth of psychedelics coming back into the marketplace today to treat various diseases, various mental states, and others is a place where that is a drug that alters your consciousness and what you're seeing with that. So we're seeing places where today we are trying to manipulate it in ways to achieve different outcomes. And we will continue to see that go as we understand the science behind it more, as we understand the physiological approaches and things that go with that. But to me, we're learning so much now as we can begin to look at brain activity and as we begin to understand more about the nuances of neurological approaches and responses, that I'm sure we're going to continue to evolve our concept of consciousness. And the fact that even often when we are unconscious, we have conscious thoughts that we can now see by using science. So it's one that I just love to think about. I would love to be able to understand and control my conscious reactions more, which would sure help many people I know, including myself, have different outlooks on the world, how we're doing things, uh, help us as we're in meetings, being able to shift consciousness and things. So I think it's one that we're going there. And, Daniel's correct. Consciousness is continually being altered. It's continually in a state of flux. And even as I sit here in my car before I get out to go to this luncheon, uh, I see the same type of thing here. It's just the different thought processes that I'm consciously going through as I'm part of this panel and as I understand the nuances. Uh, but Sharif and Donald, I think that's some of my other thoughts on it.
Thank you. So now to Rob.
I'm back. Bacteria to Bach, B-A-C-H, and back. It's by a guy named Daniel C. Dennett, and he's well published on the topic of consciousness. And the interesting thing that concept that he puts forward is that consciousness is a kind of a myth. It is we interface with the world through our brain, kind of like we interface with a computer through a computer screen. And part of how we organize the information we're presented with, we attribute to consciousness. But it is simply a way we fool ourselves into believing that we are more than what we are, and we argue we are as a biological construct of machines on top of machines on top of machines, all working together to create a concept that we term consciousness, but if it was viewed by an outside party, would simply be a biological process that results in a reasonable likelihood that we'll make decisions that are in our own best interest and over time. It's an interesting concept because it kind of challenges the belief that the Descartes belief that I think, therefore I am. And it does argue, at least he does argue, that underneath the surface, and this is undoubtedly true, that much of our brain's activities, our brain is our interface to the mind, our brain's activities have nothing to do with consciousness. That they are prescribed decision-making mechanisms that we utilize, whether we're walking or driving or breathing or whatever, that has no relationship to our belief in self or our concept of the world around us. So an interesting kind of counterpoint to whether or not we're having a discussion on consciousness, on whether or not consciousness is real, and I thought it was fairly well argued. We've got a bunch of questions coming in from the side. Let's see. Donald Duck is the Disney character. No, I think it was Daffy Duck was the term. Donald is a Disney character. Daffy would not be. Let's see. Our experience always overlays the actual thing. Maybe it's funny. Experience may not overlay the actual thing. As Donald pointed out, our memories are not to be trusted. In terms of behavior, I know one of my earliest experiences was with my grandmother was her telling me about a pool game that I'd played as a child that I have no recollection of, but in her memory it was very clear that I'd been playing pool at a pool table someplace that, as far as I know, I'd never been. So one of our memories was flawed, and if we go back, and I imagine if we were to compare our memories to our siblings, to our parents, and to our spouses, we would find huge disparities between events that we remember very clearly, and they either don't remember at all, or they remember very differently than how we remembered it. And sometimes it's a case of perspective. They're looking at an event very differently than how we looked at an event. In some cases, we just are misremembering, or they are misremembering what actually occurred. I often wonder how many arguments we get into with people that are around us that are founded in false memory, so that the slight that was made, the harm that was done, or whatever, either was unintentional or didn't occur in the first place. It's just that the memory itself is coming back to bite us in the butt. So as we talk about consciousness and the very real reality of trying to imbue consciousness into this next wave of artificial intelligence and machines, we are going to have to really think through how consciousness works in people. The perception for us is reality, and clearly any of us can be fooled. And when we are fooled, that consciousness, that connection we have to the reality we believe in, is corrupted, and any decisions we therefore make based on that misperception of reality will undoubtedly be flawed as well. And so as we create AIs, making sure that they are not corrupted in that same fashion, make sure that the information that they are receiving is accurate and correct, so the resulting decisions are accurate and correct, is also important. But it still goes back to an AI. To be an AI, to truly be an artificial intelligence, does it need to have an awareness of self? Does it need to have an awareness of things around it that have nothing to do with the task at hand? And those are decisions, or at least those are concepts that are being developed as I speak. And I don't think there's any easy answer here, because if we are flawed, in terms of how we interpret the information that around us. If our consciousness is in question, then our ability to create a true consciousness in something else is equally flawed and in question, and the end result could be problematic as we create these machines from a flawed foundation. So correcting our own foundation may be predicated on creating an AI that is what we hope it will be and not what we hope it will not be. And yet we are hell-bent for leather in creating the AI, and we have clearly not corrected our own misperceptions about the world around us, which suggests that the AIs we create will be equally flawed. And the difference being that when they make mistakes, they'll make mistakes at machine speeds. So maybe a dire forecast for our inability to really grasp consciousness and create a basic steady state that we could rely on to build upon. So interesting topic this week.
Do you have more to say?
Yeah. So we have. I just continue what Rob said. Okay. Good. Direction. Okay. First, we create the machines to replace our body. Okay. Now we try to create AI to replace our mind. Okay. So basically, these are two things that we continue to do. But in my position as the founder of pole science, I think machines, they have to solve the problem. Another way, ultimately, you have to create robots. Robots have to come into contact with the environment. They cannot continue avoid like a car, try to avoid. Okay, robot try to touch, try to avoid collision versus collision. Okay, human being execute collision 1,000 times a day. Okay, with no problem. Robot cars cannot collide. Okay, so in terms of machine, there, our current technology is still not up there yet. Also, AI is based on partially automated software. So that is also another big problem, because eventually too many partially automated software need manual updating, and they will become a prohibitively large amount of work to update. So that will bring us to a complexity crisis. So that's also bad. So technology-wise, it's pretty bad. But also, from this direction, I would like to look into the reverse of free will, okay, which is determinism. Okay, we can all have a vote. You are for free will or for determinism. Okay, in my case, I prefer to be a believer of determinism. Okay, because that would put us at the position of survival. Okay, if it's all free, we survive by random chance. That is not a good choice for me. So what we look for is we look back into the past. Another, we look at the origin of our creation. Then we predict the future. We look into eventually of self-creation. In other words, we produce machine and AI. Okay, why we do this? We're going to improve it until the point that we're going to build a robot which would more and more like human. Okay, with the mind more like a human brain. Or this self-creation. What I'm thinking is this. Okay, if some creator created the living system, he has a plan. Okay, today this plan is being unfolding. Okay, it's being unfolding. So everything work out according to his plan, even with all the fuzzy probabilistic planning, all unfolding. Okay, so what we are doing, we think we are free will, but it's really the free will that's given to us through the range of tolerance, which is part of work I'm really doing very intensively. That is fuzzy logic. Okay, you have range of tolerance and range of possibilities, where they overlap is the range of survival. Okay, so we want to create things that will survive. Okay, so today it's all unfolding. Human beings doing everything they think they are doing by their own free will, but actually it's unfolding. Whatever our Creator did not give us, whatever ability we don't have, we will not be able to use. We will not extending beyond what is given to us. Okay, so the only time when we feel we're going to have free will is to create the next generation of living system. We give it something beyond the ability we have. Okay, we can, at that time, we can say we create ghosts, we create, things we don't see in this world. Okay, but before that, we're just following the grand plan. That is the design specification of creation. Okay, when we start to self-create, not only self-create, we start to be as good as our Creator. We can create a world which we have a grand plan. Then this self-created thing will carry out whatever plan we have set for them. Okay, let me just, the way I think is this, you see, we are, we talk quite, we're all pretty fast talker. But if you look carefully, you look into your body, okay, the DNA, the real, you look at some video, real DNA operation, how fast does the DNA work? They work at least 1,000 times faster than we are. Who's controlling our body? Are we controlling? We're moving so slow. We're like a real old person versus really young people jumping around. This comparison is showing that we are not in control. Okay, something else in control. The body, the DNA fix us up. I dance 4 times a day. I got all these DOMS. This delayed onset of muscle soreness. Everything come on schedule and try to rejuvenate me. I feel this. I'm not the control. There is a machine in me that is controlling everything. And I better follow the natural path. You look at the Earth and you look at the space. The space is so hostile versus what we have here. We have a paradise here, set up so stable for us to think, to discuss, possibly to do this self-creation. But now we're getting into this military conflict in the world. It's getting somewhat doubtful. Even we can survive so long to create the next generation. Maybe there should be a more intelligent species to replace what we have here. But still, this whole thing, to me, what happening, my experience, if you want to really face the reality, you see that the whole thing is so organized, that it's not something that occur randomly. It's created. Also, you say where, they want to say that everything scientists want to say from random chance, but it's so unlikely. I'm the person who solved the complete automated software, which identified DNA as a complete automated software. Okay, so in other words, if you can program 0, 1, 2, 3, you can program a human. But we don't know how to do that, but eventually we'll probably be able to do that. And eventually we can surpass whoever created us, possibly. And then we have determinism. Okay, we decide, we want to give the person 3 eyes, 1 in the back, something like that. We want to create living things based on, or even we want to create the robotic beings, silicon beings, whatever you decide to do. But now it seems like we're just carrying out whatever has been planned by the Creator, who I don't think is it's really based on the intelligence of the universe, what I call DNA intelligence. My belief is DNA is prevalent all over the universe. So they're intelligent everywhere, So, human just part of this intelligence. Hopefully, it's a model that's going to survive and can contribute to this DNA intelligence. Also, cell intelligence. I look at some of the recent discovery in organoid. I don't know if you heard of this organoid. They can build a nerve, then build a brain, then build a from stem cell, then build a muscle, and they automatically they will self-organize. So they into a the brain can instruct the muscle how to move. Okay, so when they come into contact, these cells are so intelligent they can all connect themselves. Okay, so all these things seem like something. It's all predetermined to behave in such a fashion. They try to organize who's in charge. Okay, so basically, this actual consciousness is not new. We used to call this the ego. Our ego, our ID. It's ID, not ego. ID. Identity. We try to find out our own identity. This psychologist has always come up with new terminology for this concept of identify ourselves. This is a psychology way of looking into the origin of living systems. So this concept of things get themselves organized. Okay, this is it's once you get to a complex system like consciousness, you have many ways to see it. But if you look up, go up a level to see free will and determinism, then you find that we are at the mercy of creation. Okay, whoever created us gave us so much ability to do so many things. Then we have to carry out this. Then hopefully this creator will allow us to surpass the creator. Then we can create our own thing. At that time, we have a grand plan for the next generation. Then we probably can say we have free will. We're free to control everything. Before that, we are being controlled. I feel we're being determined. We have already things we do is pretty much determined. So my life, I follow epigenetic lifestyle, exercise. I just follow my body. I just listen to it. I feel anything bad, I will not contradict my body. I wrote in one of the proposals, I trust DNA intelligence more than I trust human intelligence. The body is intelligent. I don't think the human being is any match for it. Human doctors, I mean, So basically, I just feel how I feel. The David is no longer around. He's also sort of like that. I think, he sort of follow his own lifestyle. He think his own way. This is the way. I think I'm not at all convinced the human being has reached the age of social science, has not reached far from the age of life science. See, the pandemic was caused by nature and solved by nature. It's in human contribution in vaccines. Now it's under attack. They cause problem as much problem as the virus. So human being, I don't see that the human being can claim they have any, level of intelligence comparable to nature. It's just so far away. Also, social science. This is the field I'm really experienced. I solve saving loan crisis. I predict saving loan crisis. I predict and solve the subprime world. Now, the world is entering into an inflationary period. And they are picking up some of my idea that the interest rate should be higher than inflation. So Powell is just saying that we got to have a 4% interest rate, 2% inflation rate. It's pretty much follow the letter I sent him. I say rate of return should be greater than interest rate, than greater than inflation rate. So he couldn't understand rate of return. So he has the second two, the interest rate. Social science, I know a lot. I know they are not correct. Nobody knows social science. Okay, so it's just everybody just talking partially. They are giving finance spreadsheet. They do not give you the whole story. Finance spreadsheet has a problem that anything beyond the finite time is the area for abuse. Okay, people can arbitrarily assume what's happened 10 years from now or 5 years from now after the person retired. It can make anything large or small, whatever they want. You got to solve it to infinity. Once you mention infinity, all the business people, they just turn off. They go away. They don't want to talk to you. So this is not me. This is Kenneth Arrow, my mentor. He has a Nobel Prize. Okay, so basically this is, I'm suspicious of the knowledge of the society, the establishment. So this consciousness is a good topic, for people to really explore, higher up and lower down, how people really, the whole system interact. It's pretty much, consciousness is alive, is life itself. What the part of your conscious is your life. So they'll probably try to transport the memory of the conscious to a new body, to a clone, so they can continue to live their old life. It's a good subject. And I'm glad I meet all old friends who give some ideas. Happy to hear. Yeah, so basically anybody who has contributed, we can discuss this, if we have more time. So I would really ask you if which side you take, free will or determinism.
I want to say that when I was talking, I was presupposing what Rob was saying. Daniel Dennett has a very, very well-known book on consciousness called Consciousness Explained. And if you're interested in consciousness, whether you completely agree with it or not, it's pretty much one you should read, because everyone refers to it when they're discussing consciousness after you've reached a certain level. What David was saying about psychedelics and things like that doesn't really contradict in any way what I was talking about memory and imagination. It changes, it alters the pathways where you get your memory. And somebody asked about consciousness. Are you conscious when you're dreaming? I'd ask that question of yourself. I mean, ask yourself, are you? I mean, do you really feel you're conscious? Do you feel conscious that it's consciousness, that you're conscious if you don't have any control over things, that you can't change things that are happening? I want to say, also address Daniel Tweed. I appreciate it. He's right. It was Daffy Duck, not Donald Duck. I told you memory's not perfect. What can I say? It's just proves my point. It's getting time for closing remarks here, so I'm gonna make this my closing remarks, and I want to get back to what was saying is that when we think about consciousness, I really want to supplement what Rob was saying, is that consciousness has to be something that's part of that is part of us to be the creatures that we are, that survive in the world. It's something that happens that makes it so that we have some sort of an advantage for survival. It's got to be. That's what it is. And so when you're looking at it, you have to ask the question, what is it? So I think an interesting example is I was walking around giving out flyers for a block party that we're going to have. And when I went into one person, and there's people with dogs in their yards, and dogs will bark at you, but all they really want is to be pet. They're just bluffing. But I went into one yard and the dog actually bit me. I mean, that's the first time that's ever happened to me. But I'll tell you, the next time around, I'm going, the block party, it rained. And so we had to change the date of the block party. So I had to go around and give flyers again to everybody. And I'm telling you, the next time I did not go in that yard. I said, oh, these people can just miss the block party because they've got a vicious dog. And it's not my problem. Tough. But what else happened is whenever other yards where dogs were barking, I started thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't really take a chance on this. So I generalized, and maybe I was wrong, but I didn't get bit. And so the thing about us as human beings is that my consciousness, my brain was somehow working together to make these generalizations. And the generalization might have been wrong, but when you're looking at artificial intelligence and you're looking at machines and machine learning and all those kinds of things, how do you program in the ability to be wrong in a way that's useful? Like, what is it that a machine wants that'll make the machine's life better, that'll make the machine safer and happier, and all the kinds of things that a machine wants to make its life better? What does that mean for a machine? Those are the kinds of things that we have to use to make the decisions in our lives, and we have to be able to balance those things. And that's a lot of what our conscious mind does. There's a wonderful psychology is starting to understand that what we do is we look to the future. There's a wonderful book by Martin Seligman called Homo Prospectus. And psychologists are beginning to realize that pretty much everything we do is oriented to the future. Anybody that's listening to this show, what they're interested in, they're listening to it to learn. Why do you want to learn things? I mean, what's the point of it? I mean, what difference does it make? People want to learn things because they're going to use them in the future. It's going to make them perhaps feel better. There's reasons that you're going to use it, that you're doing it, but it's future oriented. And so our consciousness is a way that we take our experiences, our memory, our experiences of getting bit by a dog, whatever experiences that we have, and we kind of mix them together, and they become an imagination that allow us to create different scenarios, to create different ways and ideas of what could possibly happen, and compare them and weigh them with each other, so that we can decide what we think would be the best thing. But the power of what's really going on in our brain is in the unconscious part. I mean, try to lose weight. Try to get an exercise program. Try to quit smoking if you smoke. Try to do those things. Just tell yourself, because what's happening is by the time you decide that you don't want to smoke a cigarette, you've already started. Your body has already started to reach for that cigarette and do the physical process of smoking it. You can't decide before you smoke the cigarette that you're not going to smoke it. It's not, you don't have the ability to make that conscious decision. Try and stop. If you're having negative thoughts to yourself, like you're thinking, oh gosh, I really was a bad person, I shouldn't have done this, or I'm negative thoughts, I really blew it there, blah blah blah. Try and stop them. Go ahead. You can't. Where do your thoughts come from anyway? Do you say, oh, I'm going to have a thought? No, you don't. All of those things happen. All of those things are things you don't really have control over. Those things are coming from the unconscious part of your mind. So most of what's going on in you is unconscious. Your conscious mind can take those things and rearrange them and make suggestions to you. And you can use them for planning, and you can say to yourself, I'm going to go to college, so I'm going to have a better life. And you can do things like that and look at the suggestions in the same way you can say to yourself, I'm not going to go in that yard and get bit by a dog. But you can't, but your conscious mind isn't something that's making you make the decisions about what you're doing in your day-to-day life. So when it comes to AI, we've got an incredibly long way to go to be able to understand how we're going to be able to mimic what human beings are actually doing. We're very, very, very far from being able to understand that. So be grateful for the wonderful machine that we are, and have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.
I have a friend, Robert Kuhn. He's the person who does this closer to truth, which is very much like fuzzy logic, close to truth. So you can look him up, or even I can recommend you if you want to talk about consciousness. He's the person who's so interested in consciousness. And also hi Daniel for asking so many good questions. So consciousness is part of mind under our control, and unconscious is the part which is we cannot control. So it's interesting. Free will. It's give us some kind of free will. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. This is excellent discussions, and thank you, Professor Donald. You are the moderator for today's sessions. Thank you, Professor Ching, Professor Rob, and Professor David Smith for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. And we are actually developing as an academy, and we are engaging with industries. From next month, we have 12 different conferences in Bangladesh and in India, and we are engaging with more people, more youth community, and they will learn from the dialogue. They will learn from this different research-related activity. That is the way that we can uplifting the nation. Yes, country like Bangladesh, we have a lot of challenge, we have a lot of problem, but with the help of developed world, definitely we can overcome from many challenge. We have energy-related challenge, we have healthcare-related challenge, we have many things. But definitely we need to work together, we need to work hard, and we need to support each other, and we need to be more open. And we are creating this open society, and this way we can help each other. Thank you, Professor Donald and Professor Ching, for your excellent support for World Talent Economy Forum. I request all of our audience, please share our content with your government agency, with your corporation, and with academy. We are engaging with millions of youth in Asia Pacific, and our objective, we are developing a knowledge-oriented society, and definitely all of your contributions will be part of the history. Thank you everyone. Thank you, bye-bye, and take care.
Bye. Bye.